Good morning, boys and girls. It's time to practice telling time on our clocks. We're going to start with a little song I found. It's to the tune of the Muffin Man. Maybe you'd like to sing along with me. Can you tell time on an analog clock? An analog clock, an analog clock. Can you tell time on an analog clock? Let's talk about the hands. The long hand tells the minutes on the clock, the minutes on the clock, the minutes on the clock. The long hand tells the minutes on the clock. There are 60 minutes in an hour. The short hand tells the hours on the clock, the hours on the clock, the hours on the clock. The short hand tells the hours on the clock. There are 24 hours in a day. Now let's tell time on an analog clock, an analog clock, an analog clock. Let's tell time on an analog clock. What time is it now? Would you sing it one more time with me? Can you tell time on an analog clock, an analog clock, an analog clock? Can you tell time on an analog clock? Let's talk about the hands. The long hand tells the minutes on the clock, the minutes on the clock, the minutes on the clock. The long hand tells the minutes on the clock. There are 60 minutes in an hour. The short hand tells the hours on the clock, the hours on the clock, the hours on the clock. The short hand tells the hours on the clock. There are 24 hours in a day. Now let's tell time on an analog clock, an analog clock, an analog clock. Let's tell time on an analog clock. What time is it now? And if you look at my clock, it is 10 o'clock now. And all of those little dots we said were the minutes, and there are 60 minutes in an hour, and there are 12 numbers on the clock, but the song said there are 24 hours in the day. That means our hour hand will go around 2 times. 12 plus 12 is 24. Let's practice a little bit with your mouse clock. I'm going to show you a time on my digital clocks, and I want you to show the time on your analog clock, your mouse clock, and then I'll show you the correct answer, and then we'll do it a little bit of practice the opposite way. So let's practice a few of these. Look at the time, put it on your analog clock, and you should have shown 7 o'clock. Make sure the red hand is the 1, the hour pointing to the 7, no minutes after, so it's right on the 12, 7 o'clock. Okay, let's try another one. Try this one, please. And on your clock, you should have shown 12 o'clock. Both hands pointing to the 12. Please try this one on your mouse clock. And that one should look like this, 1 o'clock. Let's try a few more. Try this one on your mouse clock. And that one should look like this, 11 o'clock. Let's try a couple more. Try this on your clock, please. And you should have moved the hands to look like this for 4 o'clock. Make sure that blue one, sometimes it slides. We have to make it right on the 12. Let's try this one. And on your clock, it should look like this. Now we're going to do the opposite. You are going to write down the correct time. So I'll show you my clock, and you're going to write down the digital time. So go ahead and grab a piece of paper or your journal, and here's my clock, and you should have written 11 o'clock, 11:00. Let's try this one now. Please write down the digital time for that clock. And you should have written 2 o'clock, 2:00. The 00 stands for no minutes after. That's why our minute hand is right on the 12. Let's try another one. Let's try this one. Please write the digital time for that analog time. And you should have written 10 o'clock, 10:00. Let's do a few more. Try this one, please. And you should have written 3 o'clock, 3:00. Okay, let's try 3 more of those. Here's your next time. Write down the digital time for that one. And you should have written 9 o'clock, 9 dot dot 0 0. Okay, last two, and then we're going to try something new. And look at that time. And you should have written 7 o'clock, 7 dot dot 0 0. Last one of these before our new learning. Look at the time on the clock, and you should have written 8 dot dot 0 0. Now, you know how to tell time to the hour. We also are going to start learning how to tell time to the half hour. And I want you to watch what happens when I go from 10 o'clock to 10:30, half an hour later. So when my blue hand moves here, watch what the red hand is starting to do. The red hand, the hour hand, just moved in between the 10 and 11. And the blue hand moved, if we counted all these little dots, all the way down to the 30. So this is how we would write this time. We'll take our marker board here. We would write a 10 dot dot 30. Now we have 10:30, 30 minutes after 10 o'clock. Let's just try a couple more. We'll be working on this a lot next week also. So let's go ahead and change our clock. I'm going to start right up at the hour of 1. So right now that would be 1 o'clock. Now the minute hand is going to